States, it's virtually impossible to avoid a conversation about brackets, coaches, players and rivalries, not to mention color-coded office cubes right next door. So for those of you, and similarly, those of you who support online education or colleges and universities might deal with your own type of madness every day. We know that success doesn't come from lack of planning, but instead investing in preparation and planning, essentially building our own playbooks, our own set of strategies and tactics to pull off a win for our institutions and ultimately our students. Thus, we thought we would embrace the basketball theme. You can tell us if we wear it out too much here over the next hour for our discussion today in building our playbook. And so we've divided our webinar or our playbook into 3 major sections. 1, practice and drills. 2, plays. I would include old plays and some new ones. And then 3rd, player development or teamwork. Make sure we move ahead. So this is a large topic. We are hitting several kind of highlights of bullet points of just foundational best practices and then some new innovative or perhaps innovative to some ideas. We do have some follow-up webinars and white papers that we could reference throughout, and certainly we'll take your questions and concerns to get in more detail if need be. So let's start from the beginning, right? The foundation, practice and drilling. In this section, we'll review the best practices for online program development and delivery, really at the programmatic structural level, choosing the right program, talking about what programs are marketable, thinking about some trends at the program level, and then the foundational best practices for student experience, essentially what the market or potential students expect for their services in these day and age. Dave, I know we have recently completed, or in the middle of completing our survey for the next round of online college student survey, but I believe we have some data from last year's study on program trends.
Yeah, thanks, Hal. The slide that you see in front of you is an excerpt of the report that we publish each year at Learning House. We've done it for the last 3 years. We'll do it again this year. And one of the data points in that report is what programs are students enrolling in. You may know that there's almost 6 million students in U.S. colleges and universities that are taking at least one online course. And about half of those, 14% or 2.7 million students, are enrolled exclusively in online programs. So it's a pretty big group out there. We survey that group of fully online students each year and then report the results in a report called Online College Student, the most recent one, Online College Student 2014. So that report is available on our website. If you'd like to download it, you could read all of the subtitles here, the categories. But let me just give you the highlights here. The blue bars are the blue pieces of the pie, 28% of undergrad and 28% of grad, is the business field. Far and away, business administration is the biggest choice of online college students. So as you're thinking about the program offerings for your institution, business should be at least one that you're considering and taking a look at because it's most in demand by students. In the undergrad pie there, the 17% is nursing, health sciences, and then the next one, 14%, is computer IT-related fields. So over half of the students at the undergrad level are involved in those 3 disciplines. The grad level, business, as I said, is the same. The purple one there, 22% is education, which moves into second place as school teachers go back and get master's degrees. And then the 11% again was health sciences. So again, you see the 3 fields comprise over half of the enrollment. Now you can't see it in this slide, but if you download the copy of the report, you'll note that there's a trend that's going on, and that is that institutions are offering online programs in more specialized fields. 5 or 6 years ago, business, criminal justice, nursing, those were the big fields. And now what's happening as we see this data year after year is that institutions are becoming more specialized. So instead of just a business degree, they'll offer real estate management or a business degree with an emphasis in marketing. In this last survey, we had over 150 different subfields or specializations that were offered fully online. Programs that you may not expect, like aeronautics, addiction studies, real estate management, as I mentioned. So as this field develops and matures, we find that institutions are offering more and more niche or specialized programs. And of course, the big thing for today is what programs make sense for your institution and what are some strategies that you can follow to offer the programs that are most in demand and will be subscribed to by students. So we'll move on to the slides that start giving some ideas on strategies that you may follow.
Thanks, Dave. We do consult with several partner institutions all the time, and then outside of our institutions who just want to dip their toe in the water and say, what about program X or program Y? Do you think that's where we should start if we want to really dive in to this online realm? And we say, well, really diving in probably means leading with your strengths. And that's what we would suggest as a place to start, especially for those that are starting from scratch or thinking about reevaluating their program lineup. Consider your strengths, particularly around brand recognition. And that might be around a certain discipline or even program-specific strengths. The example here is Aurora University that has strong RN to BSN cohort offerings in local hospitals in the Chicagoland area. There really wasn't a decline in those ground programs. They just kept collecting more data from students, for their own students, that said they wanted the flexibility of online. So Aurora took that as a cue to lead with one of their strongest programs, to move it online, knowing that it could change the landscape of their audience, their student population, and they could be working in the hospital where one student meets their ground cohort and one comes online, but it would add the larger pool of students that were able to experience Aurora. Another institution that's a partner of ours began as a teaching college, and a bulk of their programs are associated with graduate education. Graduate education overall in the online realm has had a long history of gaining and waning. But in this case, we took the leap of faith, given that the Graduate School of Education is the largest enrollment by school and really began there, not with one program, but close to 9 when we first launched with this partner institution. We're now about 12 months in and then just getting ready to venture out into programs that are, I would say, not less worthy, but a bit unknown to the market and the institution, particularly in business and more STEM-related fields. Now that we have a foundation in the historical program, moving it online, we can now look at some experiment and some new programs outside of their core. Another way to think about leading with your strengths is what kind of awards and accreditation can be lifted up in the marketing messaging and recruitment of students. Are you known as a religious institution? Obviously, that would come to the forefront. For example, whether it be part institution Touro University Worldwide, which we began marketing and surveying students, particularly in Jewish populations, what type of programs they would like to see and would respond to, and then expanded from there. So the summary is, look at your ground programs with robust enrollment, and don't be afraid to work on that momentum to get you started for the online programs. Another suggestion is to not dip the toe in the water, but have a portfolio approach to your market and program structure, to be able to appeal to the widest audience necessary. Dave has always been a proponent of laddering programs and throughout the associate's, bachelor, master, and doctoral level, but also offering unique points where someone could stop out and get a certificate or stack them to get a full degree.
The ladder that you see, the ladder that you see there, I think is, in a sense, the idealized model of an institution that offers everything from associate's degrees up to doctoral degrees. The key point here is that if you offer a certificate at each of those levels, it gives a student who's anxious about maybe an online degree or concerned about finances or has concern about their ability to complete, it gives them a smaller place to start where they don't have to commit X amount of dollars or the next 3 or 4 years of their life. But the certificates are a great way for them to get started. And then when they finish the certificate, they're kind of partway or halfway to the degree, so they can move to that next level. Certificates are very easy to add because you already have the courses in your portfolio, and it's a matter of packaging them. There are some restrictions now with the gainful employment laws and regulations that you need to have certificates approved by the Department of Ed. That's not a real difficult process, but it is a bit of a hurdle. But a fully developed program like this, I think, gives your students multiple places to start, break it into small chunks, and encourage them to keep moving. Once they hit one step, it's a little bit easier step to move up to the next one.
A lot of the partner institutions that we work with began offering degrees kind of in the traditional graduate professional model on ground of degree completion, which there's still definitely a market for, and then back into the general education elective requirements. This is certainly one strategy, but another way to think about it is a bit more holistically, rather from the ground up, from 0 credits to 124, let's say, for a bachelor's degree, and then beyond with the stop-out points of certificates and associates, and then laddering graduate work above that. Alrighty, well, just as important as the foundations of the drilling and the practicing or the program structure, getting that right, choosing the right programs, and there's plenty more market research that could go into that for individual institutions. But the next kind of basic skill, if we were to say that, would be to not falter or double dribble when it comes to excellent student services. It's almost a given now that in the online market, student friendliness and knowing your audience is taken for granted. Things like transfer friendliness, ease of application, accepting experiential credit, transferring in and applying 90 credit hours is the norm these days. Unrestricted degree plans, streamlining of gen eds and electives, multiple entry points, as well as flexible degree models or non-cohort models, something more like carousel, where one could enter a program at any time, are now just simply standard when they used to be unique. This is really the point of entry. We would say kind of the generic excellence for student friendliness that an institution has to build to go on to the next step.
Hal, this is Dave. Let me interject here for a second, okay? I just want to comment on one of these points. That's about being transfer credit friendly. In the surveys that we've done of online students, this stands out as one of the top issues they're concerned about. We'll get into a couple of the other issues, but transfer credit is usually in the top 3 or 4 issues. They want an institution that will accept all of their prior credits, and they want information about that. And typically they want some kind of degree audit prior to enrollment so they know just how many credits they have to complete at the institution. And oftentimes the barriers on transfer credit are within the institution. I mean, it's something the institution is doing to put up a barrier or make it more difficult for students to utilize that transfer credit and get maximum effect from it. So look carefully at your policies, the way your degree plans are structured, to make sure that you're not imposing barriers that don't need to be there for those students. Hey, I want to remind people, too, that we're happy to take questions. In this early part of the webinar, you can text those questions in via the chat feature. So feel free, as we're talking here, to text in your question, and we'll pause and respond or answer those. So don't hesitate if you have something as we go along that you want to raise anytime in the presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Not only do we hear every day from students, how long is this degree going to take me, but they also ask, how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah, this is one of the slides.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You go ahead, Hal. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, we're not the same thing. Fierce competition abides, and value and affordability, I would see, a theme that we've always heard but coming up more and more. Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the two most important features we see from the research when students are selecting an institution to enroll in are brand and price. They want an institution that has a good reputation, that they've heard about, that they have confidence in, that's accredited. That's the brand part. But price is right there behind it. It's an important consideration. In this last survey in 2014, we asked the question, did you pick the cheapest program when you were looking at programs to enroll in? And on the one side, undergrad, 66% said no. 79% of the grad students said they didn't pick it just to pick the cheapest one. So there's a place there for institutions to emphasize their quality, the kind of features that they provide. But another way to look at this data is 34% of those undergrads said, I'm picking the cheapest place. So if they see your institution and 4 other ones in their search pattern, they're not going to look at other things like the program, the kind of faculty you have. They're going right on price. So it's something to keep in mind as you set your tuition for sure. Here's some examples that I pulled out of the literature on what some competition is doing. Straighter Line is a for-profit company, but they offer classes for credit because they've had their courses approved by the American Council on Education review process. And you can essentially take the courses that they offer. I think they have 40 to 50 classes available now for $49 a month per course. New Charter U is another for-profit, an interesting institution that they opted out of the Title IV financial aid program just so they could lower their price and not run afoul of what's called the 90-10 rule, which only applies to for-profits, but $200 per month, take as many courses as you want. University of the People, $100 a course, basically. They offer a limited number of programs, but this is a nonprofit that's trying to get at that price level. And I think the next one here is Coursera. Coursera doesn't offer courses for credit yet, but they've started packaging sets of 3 and 4 courses on the same topic, like a certificate, and they call that a specialization. And for $200, you can take the, say, 4 courses in their specialization, get verified examinations, so it's a little bit more rigorous, and get a piece of paper, a certificate at the end saying you completed these 4 courses at this level. So it's just a little step away from fully credit courses, but $200 of specialization. So there are some institutions that are really driving hard on price and trying to utilize the cost efficiencies of online programs where you don't have to build dormitories and residence halls and gymnasiums and so forth to get that price down to a really reasonable point. So this is kind of what's coming on the horizon in terms of challenges around price besides the traditional institutions in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a few quick questions from participants. These are both for Howell and Dave, so anyone that would like to take these. First question we have is, can you further explain gainful employment and degree laddering relationship?
Yeah, in a general sense, gainful employment, the general concept is that students need to be able to earn a certain salary or be gainfully employed after completing the program. And the Department of Ed is debating, guidelines around that. But it's a concept that they're starting to pay attention to, that if you earn a credential like a certificate or a degree and it costs you X amount of dollars, are you able then to be gainfully employed after that and basically be able to pay off your Title IV loans? So they pay a little bit more attention to certificates. Those are shorter programs, but is there a real job at the end of that certificate, and will completing the certificate really lead to some kind of gainful employment in a particular field or industry? I don't know the particulars, but that's the general concept that they use to evaluate certificate programs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dave. For our next question, can you explain what you mean by non-transferable entry course?
Sure, I'll take that one. Sorry, I breezed over that. So in terms of course scheduling, particularly for undergraduate programs, and when you're evaluating transfer credit about what courses students need to take, you often solve half the dilemma of where they should start by just offering a course that every undergraduate online degree student would begin with. Some institutions do this in terms of kind of a creative thinking course combined with Introduction to University X, or sometimes it's actually with religious affiliated institutions, a more religiously themed course or topic where students can't transfer credit in lieu of that course. So in that case, let's say you have students coming in for a bachelor's in business, a bachelor's in psychology, maybe even RN to BSN students. All of those first-time students would begin with that foundational course. This gives a little bit more time to figure out what perhaps the second course in their program lineup needs to be, as well as be able to control their first experience with the university.
Great, thank you, Howell. The last question I have a feeling you'll both want to interject on is, do you see cost of education as a factor going forward?
This is Howell. I'll start, and then I'll turn it over to Dave.
Yeah.
Yes and yes. We feel the price pressure. We work with over 80-plus institutions. We feel it every day and in every market. Particularly just the innovations, even competency-based, we can get into that, and subscription models, how that's changing. Public universities often get into the online space at reduced rates. And any student that's price conscious, which most are, have this in the back of their mind.
Great.
Dave, do you have any more to elaborate?
No, I would reiterate that it's a big issue. Like I said, it's of the top two concerns, it's always brand and price. What's the quality and price? And you have to play off quality and price. If you're the cheapest, does that mean you're low quality? If you're very expensive, can you demonstrate somehow to those students that your quality is better than that they would get at a lower cost institution? That's the real challenge for online administrators. We're going to move into a section here about well, that's just, it's a big issue for everybody.
That's a perfect transition for us, too. Those are the questions we have for right now. I would like to encourage everyone to submit your questions via chat. Dave and Hal are definitely looking forward to them, but we'll continue on with the presentation for now.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, so let's say we have all those foundational plays and drills under our belts. Then there's some old school plays like multiple start dates a year, offering programs and courses on that carousel model I mentioned before, maintaining a reputation as a transfer-friendly institution that will always be a part of a winning playbook compilation. However, champions consistently innovate to gain an edge, to be a differentiator. Innovation can be a little bit relative here when it comes to online and individual institutional needs, but here's a few ideas that we see as where universities are moving to stand out from the crowd. time to completion, just like price and value and affordability, as top of mind, there seems to be that how fast can I get finished, or how long will it take me to finish my degree? I wouldn't say there's a race to shrink it down, essentially without quality, of course, but we do see almost every year some tightening of standards in this regard. An MBA used to be something like 18 months. We now see the 12-month MBA almost everywhere. Most recently, helped a partner institution launch a 10-month MBA. Talk about intensive as a way to stand out in the market. STAR faculty members, particularly for the online realm, sometimes get overlooked. This is also a way to stand out from the crowd, to be a bit distinctive. STAR can mean lots of different things. It could be someone that perhaps teaches more in a professional business capacity and therefore has experience running a large company, or perhaps a nonprofit in the area and can draw folks in. Or perhaps another thing that we have seen partner institutions do, for example, a strong exercise science program, is to actually ask a guest instructor to come teach their online program, exercise science, which is really strong, who is a professional triathlete and brings with him not only knowledge, but also, frankly, some marketability and recognition for a year at the visiting professorship in their online division. Again, excellent student services, they might already be taking place, but how do you highlight them to make your program or your online degree programs as points of distinction? Whether that means featuring communities that have happened organically within your online communities environment, or perhaps even demonstrating the office hours or the hours that a student 24/7, for example, could call in and receive assistance. Beyond that, there are certainly other what we call hooks to get a program to stand out, or a set of series of programs to stand out in a crowded market. For example, we had mentioned value and price before. Touro University Worldwide is an online division of Touro system, who recently went into the market with a rather aggressive scholarship called Achieve Now. This scholarship, not only did one get an iPad if they had the stipulation and one course free, they also received a significant amount off tuition. Now that wasn't just given. There's certainly retention and attendance and academic standards that had to be met as the scholarship is doled out. But it definitely gave Touro a boost January year over year in terms of applications, leads, and starts for their programs overall. Another example, these are more kind of marketing hooks, particularly not related to one program, but a whole series of programs at the university, with Concordia University St. Paul's Friends and Family Scholarship, which is not unusual. Institutions do this all the time, but perhaps don't drive specific campaigns around it. This one got lots of press, especially through social media spheres, where it became a little bit of a pass it on, share the love, be a golden bear kind of campaign. Everyone liked the warm fuzzies around that one. Another way to be distinctive or to stand out with a unique play is, just as Dave said, featuring the outcomes and results, particularly on that quality sphere and the quality scale. What we found that institutions don't do a great job of highlighting what they're really good at. One, they know they might be tracking it, but now how do you turn it around to the audiences that really are hungry for that information? Something like test results and placement rates for particular programs, especially those that are more professionally based, go without saying as a way to stand out. Retention rates are not often talked about, particularly adult and graduate market, more so graduation rates we see more, but one way to actually fight off the elephant in the room is to talk about how to get to that graduation rate through excellent retention rates. Again, highlighting awards and recognition, whether that be at the faculty level, the the student level, the institutional level, or even alumni within your programs to make sure they're pervasive throughout your marketing materials and your program outcomes. Job placement and advancement rates, again, for those of us that work primarily within and in liberal arts institutions and nonprofit institutions, this one is a little bit of is a little foreign to us, but something that specifically the adult and graduate market is looking for. We'll look at an example of that here shortly. And then again, making the programs and the suite of programs for the programs really real and the institution genuine to the potential student by featuring testimonials of alumni, current students, you name it. So here's an example of King University is working right now to promote their retention rates at the forefront of their marketing messaging and at the forefront of their program discussions internally. This is just an example of all the students that began in spring 2013, what the retention rate is years over year, versus to date, versus 2014 summer students that started, what the retention rate is. There's a lot of context behind this, but the point is you don't often hear institutions talking about retention rates for the positive, and if there are nuggets or golden opportunities to talk about that more, why not bring it to the forefront? Another example where King is experimenting in their messaging to potential and current students is really lifting up that role of student friendliness and student services, excellent student services, particularly through the work of their advisors and success coaches, as well as the experience of students feel within the classroom, the online classroom. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out how to turn that around to a larger audience, that kind of connection between an advisor or coach and the student, but nonetheless important, perhaps through a testimonial is the way that could come out, or peer mentoring, where students are talking about resources to each other that students could use.
This next slide shows some of the results of the Online College Student 2014 survey. We were trying to find out which marketing messages were most appealing to students. We constructed about 20 different messages and then paired those in groups of 3, and then had the students rate those and then combine the results. So the bottom line was that the marketing message that this university has a 90% job placement rate got 25% of the preferences from students, compared to the second place marketing message, which was earn your degree in 1 year or study at your own pace, with 10% each. The point here is that this was far and away the most popular message for students to talk about job placement rates and to advertise what your rate was. So this harkens back to other data in that survey that says the overwhelming reason why students are going to online programs are for improved employment opportunities or job improvement. They want a new job, they want a promotion or a better job, they want their first job. Almost across the board, that's the reason why students are going to online programs. And there's some evidence that that's the primary reason why many students go to traditional face-to-face programs. Yet it's rare to find an institution that advertises their placement rates. And you tie also with this graduation rates, people want to know that they're going to finish if they go to this program. So it's a message to think about. We looked kind of hard, and we found this next slide's an example of an institution that is advertising their placement rates. DeVry University, a large for-profit, has been doing this for some time. It seems to be a central theme of their message. Unfortunately, and Hal has more experience with this than I do, but many of the partner institutions that I've worked with at Learning House aren't even sure what their placement rates are. and there's not a good standardized way in U.S. higher education to calculate placement rates. Each institution kind of has their own definition. I mean, is it a job within 6 months of graduation? Does the job have to be in their field? What happens if the student goes on to grad school, and so forth? Most institutions don't have a real clear definition that they apply consistently. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for institutions that do calculate their retention rate in a reasonable way to brag about it or to advertise it. And you can even add to this average salaries or gain in salary after the student graduated from when they started the program. That data is usually pretty available if you spend a little time digging it out. And I think it'll have a tremendous impact. You know, if you look at marketing messages that are out there, invariably they say it's convenient, it's flexible to go to school online. I've been in this business for 15 years directly in online programs. Everybody says that. Everybody's been saying it for 15 years. And frankly, it's getting old. Everybody has the same level of convenience and flexibility. So it's time for institutions, I think, to really focus on outcomes like placement rates, graduation rates, learning rates that would help you stand out and would really appeal to students.
Exactly, Dave. And I have an anecdotal experience. I was just with a partner institution last week, and I was asking, you know, are you currently serving your adult undergraduate population, ground or online or hybrid, whatever the modality be, as well as graduate? And I said, oh, we do it for the trad, you know, at graduation every May. And it goes out, but I really don't think we do that for the rest of our population, which was swelling. And so we sat on that for a while, and then I said, well, I'm just going to swing by the Office of Institutional Effectiveness and just ask if I could take a look at the current survey instrument. And she said, oh, yeah, we've had this data for the last 4 years. And then I went back to the University Marketing Alumni and Development team and said, did you know this existed? And no, they didn't know that existed. It was like stumbling across a treasure chest of information, in particular marketing messages, but also the culture and the heart of the school, of the student experience. So that was fun.
Yeah, Hal, let me jump in here, too. My experience, most of the institutions that we work with have far better retention rates, which would lead to better job placement rates for nonprofit institutions, the kind that most of you folks work in. So you've got a good story to tell. Your employment rates, placement rates are high. And, again, the data that we collect, most of these students get a promotion within 1 year. They get a gain in salary. So there's lots of rich evidence that going to college online pays off. It pays off financially for students as well as in their relative values like self-worth and accomplishment and so forth. So it's a good story, but not very many people are telling that story.
Exactly. Well, another area of program promotion that we're seeing a lot more movement in is in actual partnerships. We're calling this Play 3 teamwork, particularly at the community college level, with both public and private institutions. Back in the day when articulation agreements are still standard, a lot of universities are trying to go beyond that. Just having a piece of paper and accepting credits is just step one. Opening centers on campuses to promote their online programs, sharing faculty across institutions is another. Giving credit or reworking legacy curriculum to thus incorporate perhaps more ASS or even technical degrees into the curriculum to be able to transfer in. Or even reversing the whole process. The example here that I put up is King University's partnership with community colleges around Tennessee for the reverse transfer program. Again, giving credit for students once they complete an associate's degree and recognizing that, allowing them to move on to the 4-year degree at King. Closely related, although a different population, is when institutions invest in business to business, or community and nonprofit relationships within their area and beyond. This is, from our perspective, probably an untapped play for most of the institutions that we consult with and that come to us for advice. This is an area that takes a lot of, we call it boots on the ground or groundwork, something that's not normally familiar to not-for-profit institutions. It might be happening in the development office, the alumni office, and even recruiting, but this kind of strategic effort to tie it all together with the local community, whether that be partnering with a small manufacturing company or a branch of something larger like a Target in the area or Best Buy or UPS. Or even at the programmatic level, like hospitals. It's amazing to me how many universities we speak with that are looking to take their RN to BSN online, but don't have any formal partnerships with hospitals in their region, where these students would actually be telling them what they need and demand in that region. So this is a whole webinar. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I think it would be helpful if you would explain how the business liaisons work and how they work with businesses, discounting and things like that to get a better feel for this.
Yeah, so universities sometimes put, we call boots on the ground or liaisons, folks that go and their whole job is to create these business-to-business networks between the university and the business. But they have to go in with something besides we have just these really great quality degrees. Yes, you love us, and a lot of your employees are alumni, but it's really developing a reciprocal relationship where the university can supply graduates that meet workforce development needs of that company, and the company can send folks or potential students back to the university, whether it's to get a certificate or to go on to a graduate degree, and at the same time are sharing in the success of each other. And that might mean getting one's foot in the door through perhaps offering a discount or a scholarship with these specific partners. Particularly companies that offer tuition reimbursement to their employees, which is becoming more rare every year as a benefit, but one that shouldn't go unnoticed by universities looking to take their degree programs to career enhancers specifically, and perhaps even career changers for those that want to get into a different degree.
Yeah, a more advanced version of this is sometimes institutions will even work with a particular business or company or corporation to offer one or two courses or a program that's tailored to that business. So, and you can draw for faculty from the people that help run and manage that business, and they can help design curriculums. So there's different levels of how you develop these tight relationships with corporations, businesses, and they could be nonprofit businesses, and help them get involved so they have an ownership of that program and will send their employees to it.
It's interesting to see how universities, where they position these strategic business partnership initiatives within their organization. Sometimes, especially for online programs, sometimes they come out of kind of the online division. Sometimes they come out of online admissions and recruitment and marketing. And other times are more tightly intertwined with career services, spanning all types of modalities. Do we have a question, Erin?
We do. We have a related question too. How or where would you look to find these companies that are interested?
There's a lot of cold calling that's involved, but really starting with whom you know. Board members would be step one. Advisory members, particularly the partner institution that is just launching a healthcare administration degree, and they have an advisory committee made up of local hospitals and business people. That would be a place to start, obviously. And then alumni as well. Where are your alumni working, and how can we have how can the university, as in we, have a formal partnership between the university and that employer. That's just a place to start, and then a lot of cold calling.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great start.
Are there any other questions on this section? There are plays that we didn't mention, such as diversifying your portfolio, like thinking about MOOCs or integrating MOOCs and transfer credit into your curriculum, or even competency-based learning. But those are such large topics of their own, we decided to omit them for this round. Okay. For our final section, we've entitled Player Development, or really the management of degrees, or those of us that are managing online programs. All of us that spend time with students, faculty, staff, administrators, helping them develop the stamina, hopefully, to persevere and succeed under pressure, advance their expertise, and ultimately contribute to this unique team and culture, this even unique online campus culture that will make our institutions stand out from others. This is a big topic because it really depends on who's involved in the team, right? And what is the definition of success? I think this is a place that in our experience, universities, sometimes we have to back into to really every few months or years in say, okay, let's revisit the goal. Is the goal something around enrollments or student starts in so many years? Is it just to experiment perhaps a professional studies program to go online? Is it really to build out an adult and graduate professional division that didn't exist on ground before and now is online as well? Is it to consolidate branch campuses? Is it to expand branch campuses with online? There's all types of definitions of success, but having a clear one from leadership is key. Institutions that do this well have it plastered throughout the university visually, as well as a part of the culture and the conversations that are taking place. We call it kind of a roadmap for success. And along that roadmap, there are some key critical timeframes and milestones to take into consideration if we want to back up particularly on what programs to launch. Looking at market research, doing your due diligence on if the program is structured right, all of those foundational best practices, what kind of plays or hooks you're going to take it in a different direction. How does it all relate to the bottom line and the budgeting process in terms of course delivery and development, faculty and instructor pay, and then how long is it going to take to get through internal approvals, particularly on the curriculum level throughout the institution. Sometimes that takes years. Sometimes it can be fast-tracked into weeks and days. And then outside accreditation approvals, how long and what time frames is that going to affect the launch or the expansion of online degree programs at the regional accreditation level, and then perhaps even at the vertical or the program level. And lastly, this is my favorite, because it takes a while to get the message out to the marketplace, especially if you're not starting with that strength, from that position of strength, or from a program that the market recognizes, or a brand, as Dave said, is the number one reason, or the number one thing students are looking for that resonates. It takes time to build that up. Oftentimes, we work with universities where faculty and academic departments are amazing and innovative and willing to launch a program, let's say in August, and we learn about it today, but it takes some groundwork, and they're willing to do it and to put up the hard work of the courses and getting the materials out and developing quality courses, but actually getting the word out about the program in just a few months' time can be very expensive and perhaps disappointing if not given a long enough ramp-up time to get the message out. So those are, I would say, they're not linear kind of milestones at institutions. We see these happening all at once, kind of in Gantt chart fashion, but being aware of them, tying it back to that leadership and strategic vision of what's the priority to move programs through the pipeline is key to eventually getting everyone on the same team. And how that team is structured varies, of course, at each institution. We do see some themes that emerge. One would be here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Dave, would be this idea of a main campus with historical branch campuses that often served graduate or adult populations, and then the online division staying alone, but also serving all of the rest of those divisions.
Yeah, I use this graphic to illustrate the concept that if you're building an online program, it's very similar to building a branch campus 500 miles away from the university. It helps institutional leaders, faculty, board members, and folks to think about, as you move in and develop your online programs, to think of it like building another location somewhere remote. What do you need at that remote location to build, a branch campus, so to speak? Well, you need a leader, somebody that's in charge at that campus. You'll need some faculty there. You'll need some other support staff. What kinds of things do you not need to replicate? Well, you don't have to build another library, probably, because you can do interlibrary loan back and forth. You don't need 2 business offices, for example. So it's helpful for especially top leaders to think about it like a branch campus. Even though it may be on the same floor of the building, you're really building another version of the university or the college in a different modality. And in some cases, it needs separate policies, staff members, different kinds of governance structures, and so forth. This next slide, we try to break out a little bit the kinds of things that you need to really run a successful online program. So if you look down that right-hand side, course scheduling is typically different. So the online division needs their own academic calendar and their own schedule. I mean, we mentioned earlier that students prefer shorter courses or a different structure. So 6 to 8 weeks is the term structure that's most appealing to online students. Most universities and colleges run on typical 15 or 16-week semester. Marketing. You may need 2 marketing departments or at least 2 marketing strategies, because it's a different way to contact those online students and to get the message to them. Enrollment management is clearly separate functions. Rarely is one person good at both online enrollment counseling and face-to-face. I mean, online you have to do everything over the phone and via email, so it takes a different kind of communication skill than to host a campus visit or to do a college fair. Advising tends to be different. Faculty supervision and expectations. If you're going to teach the same curriculum and the outcomes should be identical, but faculty hours, faculty workloads, faculty training, and the way to supervise those faculty can be very different. If you have faculty in 20 different locations around the country, how do you have a faculty meeting, and what are the expectations for those online faculty? The trend that I've noticed is that as institutions get into online, it kind of forces them into having remote faculty. Oftentimes you'll see a scenario where there's a valued faculty member who does a great job at the university, but their spouse gets a job in another city, so they want to relocate, but they want to continue to work for the university, and you want them because they do a good job for you. So they become a remote virtual faculty member, maybe teaching full-time, and you're glad to have them, but creates different kind of supervision. How do they do office hours? What do you count as promotion and tenure criteria for a virtual faculty member who never comes to meetings? So it creates a series of governance issues as well when you move into online, because those kinds of decisions will invariably follow. So it's helpful, I think, to think about carving out an administrative unit that has its own leadership and its own set of policies and governance issues where they're necessary, and where they share a common curriculum and a set of outcomes and some services with all the other units on campus. So those are, go ahead, Hal.
Well, I was just going to add that, and then occasionally I would use the word audit those university-wide service policies through your online or your distance education students' eyes. That might mean that the tutoring center on campus, perhaps there is a online resource that would be just as helpful for students to kind of consistently walk in their shoes, so to speak, about navigating those shared services.
Sure. This last slide applies primarily to private institutions. Most of the folks on the call here are from private institutions. The numbers change a little bit when you look at the publics. But this is a continuum that institutions go through as they develop online programs. And can we advance to the next slide, please? This shows that there's a group of institutions that want nothing to do with online. They've decided it doesn't fit their mission. They'll never do it. And that's a pretty small group, but they're there. I call them the isolationists. There's another group, especially in this nonprofit private college group, that are wanting to do online. They're thinking about it. Maybe they're offering a class or two. They typically start with gen ed classes. And they cross the line there to startup when they offer their first fully online degree program. And that's typically led by a faculty member, a department chair who's kind of spearheading that, maybe a person who's a little bit entrepreneurial in style. And then after that first one or two programs starts to work and gain traction, they jump over to this developer fashion where they're adding more and more online programs. And this is a key decision point because typically here is when that senior administrator is hired to run the online programs. The president, the provost, people realize, hey, we're in online. It's going to be part of our strategy going forward. Most universities now feel like that's a critical part of their strategic plan, so they hire somebody to start to manage it. That brings on more specialized staff. Well, we need instructional designers, we need enrollment managers, we need people like success coaches that service these students. So you start to build this administrative unit that's your online division. And then as you move into the next phase, the builder phase, you have 5 or more fully online programs. You're really a player now. Some institutions make a critical decision here to draw a really hard line between the main institution or the campus and the online programs. They'll even move the online programs off-site to an office building, or even I've seen them 20 miles away from campus, and they really separate those. They use those as cash cows to feed money back to support the campus, but they don't let the students take online classes. They kind of put these barriers up, don't expect faculty necessarily to teach online courses, but they go out and hire adjuncts to do that. And that can be a successful strategy. We have a number of partners that keep a pretty clear demarcation and work well. At the very top end, though, those integrator institutions, I've seen a few of, that they kind of do that breakaway piece where they build their online division, but then they reintegrate them. They put them back together, and it becomes one blended institution. There are a few institutions, for example, that offer almost every degree program, both online and face-to-face. Most of their faculty teach online courses and face-to-face courses. Most of their students move back and forth from online to face-to-face. So the institution really leverages that ability and kind of services students where their needs are. I think those institutions that reach that level are very well positioned for a future where it's going to get more competitive and there's going to be more challenges out there. But that's the continuum that most institutions go through. So something to think about is where you want to end up. You want to end up with that kind of dual relationship where there's a campus that stays pristine and an online division somewhere else in an office building, or is your vision long-term to be a fully integrated institution? That will change the kinds of decisions that you make along the way depending on what your ultimate goal is, and will help you get there faster, I think. So that's the end of our time for the appointed time for the webinar. Hal and I are happy to stay on now. We'll open it up for audio questions and discussion, and we'll stick around until we kind of run out of questions. So I'll say thank you very much for participating. I've enjoyed the conversation, and Hal, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Dave. Erin, do we have any more questions before?
We actually do have a couple questions for you guys. Going to start with some of the less broad questions first. Is a blended version of the Academy more appealing?
Is a blended program more appealing to the market or perhaps more palatable to an institution? I would say it frankly depends on the discipline, for sure, whether it applies or a hybrid appeals to the market, particularly graduate education or EDDs often have some type of hybrid component during the summer. Others simply do not, or sometimes they're mandated because of clinical experiences, particularly in allied health. I would say institutions, if given the, historically, and precedent was if given the choice, hybrid feels a bit more safer in terms of the program delivery, but it can also be limiting to the audience that can't travel as the student population outside of 100 miles of the university perhaps picked up. Institutions that we work with often struggle whether to have a program in several modalities, and if the numbers, the enrollment support all the modalities, fully ground, hybrid, and online, by all means, that makes sense, but oftentimes that can also stretch resources if not managed appropriately, stretching faculty and course development costs. So sometimes hybrid probably is more appealing, particularly internally, but might not make sense to the external market.
I'll piggyback on that. Let me piggyback on that. There are some questions in the online college student survey that address this. I don't have the exact numbers at the tip of my head, but about 30% of the students say they don't ever want to set foot on campus and they don't ever want to be required to attend class in the synchronous environment, in an online activity. They just want to be totally independent. So you'll cut out that group of potential students. Another third say they like synchronous activities where everybody's, online at the same time. So you get different views there, but there's clearly some limiting factors.
Great. At this time, I would just like to encourage anyone that if you have a question, you can either type it into the chat, or if you prefer, we can set it up so you can ask the question live. Just go ahead and message me through the webinar. But we do have a few more questions for Howell and Dave. The next one is, the trend is to have larger enrollments in online courses. Has smaller class size and promotion of faculty to student interaction been considered as a hook in marketing?
Yes, and yes, largely because many of the institutions we are partners with are based in that historical foundation of having small class sizes and promoting small faculty-student ratios. And so often that high-touch environment extends the online realm as well. However, that said, sometimes it doesn't make fiscal responsibility to limit course size to a certain number due to budget constraints, or perhaps even because it doesn't fit the pedagogy of the course. There's so many different variables there. I don't believe, Dave, go ahead. I said we haven't done a primary study on course size, but we're engaged with it every day.
Yeah, I'll comment. This is old data. In the previous life, I was the chief academic officer at Kaplan University back when we had like 60,000 online students. And we did some clear research where we could do direct experimental design, where we would have a class with 15 students, a class with 20 students, a class with 25 students, or 30, taught by the same faculty member with the same content and so forth. So we tried to really standardize it for good research. And we could never get significant difference in student outcomes based on size. It's just hard to get that students are learning more or they're more satisfied with the course. If you get above 30, it starts to peter out, but also if you get lower than 15 or 10, it starts to deteriorate as well. So there's kind of a good spot there, but it's a pretty wide range on what is effective instruction. Also, keep in mind that an institution like that had clear guidelines and expectations for faculty responsiveness to students. So we expected faculty members to respond on the message boards at least 3 out of 5 days and once on the weekend, within 24 hours on the weekend, within 12 hours on the regular weekdays. So there was high levels of student interaction that you could expect because you were clear in your expectations with faculty and students, so they had good interaction with their faculty members. But it's hard to get a good effect, in my experience.
Great. No, that absolutely makes sense. Thank you, Dave and Hal. All right, for our next question, do you have recommendations for encouraging more faculty to embrace online classes?
I think this is a perennial question. It comes up all the time. Goodness, if we had the magic pill, we would. For the partner institutions that we work with, really it comes down to actually living the experience and giving it a try, and then be able to make a decision and build up some early adopters within individual programs that have gone through a course development process and perhaps a teaching a course as well. I'd also encourage anyone that hasn't had an opportunity to actually, the faculty member that hasn't had the opportunity to be an online student, to somehow find that experience as well, to get a taste for what it's like. Dave, you've been at this a lot longer than I.
Yeah.
That question comes up almost every time. Mm-hmm.
We did a survey of the chief academic officers of private institutions and publics. This is the number one issue by far. 85% of institutions have that as their number one concern. And I hear this over and over. It's education, education, education. Keep giving your faculty opportunities to learn, to participate, incentivize wherever you can, give them a free iPad, give them summer stipends, to participate in that training or that education. That's the way most institutions that have been successful approach it. They try lots of different strategies, lots of different incentives, lots of different help. And finally, many institutions say it's not our job to change our faculty or to convince them. They hired on to teach a certain way. That's what they're comfortable with. It's really hard to change the attitudes and the styles of some faculty member. So don't waste your time doing it. Just go hire adjuncts to teach those classes that are anxious and willing. And there's a longer-term strategy here. Some partners that I've worked with set a standard that going forward, we're only going to hire new faculty that have online experience or online capability or are interested and anxious. So these institutions are taking a long view that says in 10, 15 years, all of our faculty are going to feel comfortable and be adept at online, and we're going to hire specifically for that going forward. This problem will go away in another 10 or 15 years as new faculty come on, but it's something we have to deal with now.
Okay, great. Right now, I have one more question. It's a nice broad one. What is the best marketing and recruitment approach for an online program?
Okay. So marketing is sometimes an exercise in throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks and doubling down on the things that stick. So I would say, obviously, depending on the budget, one area to really, one could start and test the marketing arena for that program or set of programs is largely in the digital realm. At Learning House, we do that through pay-per-click efforts to test the resiliency and the recognition of a brand. So that's a place to start. You can think also in three major categories in your marketing strategy. One would be kind of traditional media, TV, radio, print, and branding exercises in that regard. Another one would be digital marketing activities, just like PPC that I mentioned, website strategies, inbound strategies. And that third kind of lever of marketing is that partnership effort. What are you doing to promote the programs at community colleges, throughout businesses? And there are dozens of kind of channels and options within each of those three major categories. I would say budget would probably be the place to start. Direct mail would not be the place to start for your online students. And we see that still as a channel that many institutions still leverage, but perhaps didn't have the greatest rate of return. That's a big topic. We can point you to some others.
Yeah, it's a huge topic. I have a comment here. I don't want it to sound harsh, but it is in some ways. I'm thinking of a presentation that Art Kirk did. Art Kirk is the president of St. Leo's College down in Florida, one of the early leaders and adopters of online programs. Art's been doing it for like 15 years. He was a presenter at our Connect conference. Learning Health hosts a conference for online programs. It'll be July 8th, 9th, 10th, I think, this year in Louisville, that people are welcome to sign up for and attend. But Art was a keynoter at the conference, and in his presentation, he had a slide where he showed a big pile of money and the person pushing the money forward. And he said in his experience, he had a little bit of money when he first went to St. Leo's. Then he was able to carve that out of the budget, even though they had leaky roofs and all kinds of problems. And he could use that money to invest in building new programs that would kind of change the direction of the university, which he was very successful at. It's a very successful university now. But he said, I bet all my money in online programs, and he had $200,000, I think, he was able to carve out of his annual budget for that. So the message is kind of go big or go home. To do online program marketing successfully in this day and age with the competition that's out there, you can't dabble in it very well. If you're only going to offer one or two programs and have a little bit of marketing money behind those, you're just not going to be very successful. I mean, our most successful partners have 30 or 40 fully online degrees, and they put major dollars into marketing those, and they market in a variety of channels, as Hal just said. So if you want to think about it, think about Art Kirk 15 years ago. He had $200,000, and he bet it, in his online program, pushed that money forward. You have to think about a strategy where you're going to build a decent set of online programs and put the resources behind it. Some institutions say, well, we're going to start, but we're only going to have a part-time person lead the effort. We'll take a dean who's already overworked and overloaded and give them responsibility to build our online programs. That kind of effort's not going to work. You really have to dedicate and commit to it, and then you can be successful. So there is kind of a critical point there, I think.
Excellent point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't believe that we have any more questions at this time, so I'd just like to thank everyone for attending the webinar this afternoon, and a very special thanks to Howell and Dave for their time and insights into our topic. As a reminder to everyone, we will be sending the slides and a link to the recording of the webinar over the next few days. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Howell or Dave.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.